I would like to say a few words about Kolkata Centre for Creativity. Uh, it is a multidisciplinary interactive arts center located in Kolkata. It's 70,000 square feet center that champions in art and cultural landscape of contemporary India since November 2018 we started, so we are quite new. KCC works in research development, practice, presentation and application of visual art, performing arts, culinary arts, craft, restoration, conservation of art, art therapy and well-being. It is the first in Eastern India that make art accessible for visually challenged and specially abled people under our Art for All initiative. And today's program is another initiative to look into the world of art through the glasses of art administration and entrepreneurship. We have with us one of our very own Vikram, who has been working with KCC for quite long. In fact, before the center actually started full on, he has been with us since then. We will talk about his journey about art practitioner to entrepreneur. So I think here Vikram doesn't need an introduction, but I would nonetheless give it. Vikram is a dancer, choreographer and curator presenter based in Kolkata and working internationally. He heads both Ranan and Pickle Factory Dance Foundation, an Art Think South Asia Arts Management Fellow, Global Fellow of the International Society for Performing Arts, and an alumnus of the Australian International Arts Leader Program. Vikram was awarded the Ustad Bismillah Yuva Puraskar from Sangeet Natak Akademi, Government of India, for his work in contemporary dance in 2015. So Vikram, hi.
Hi Titash, thanks so much for inviting me to do this. Yes, I have been working through Pickle Factory, working with Kolkata Centre for Creativity before they actually formally launched. I think we worked together for Pickle Factory Season 1 for the first time in February 2018, which was when the centre was still being built. So the gallery, the ground floor gallery, was incomplete and we still did an exhibition there. I think we are probably the only ones apart from Imami Art who have actually used that space. So it's been a long association. Well, we are both quite young because Pickle Factory was also launching in February 2018 and KCC was also opening its doors before it had actually finished construction. So in that sense, our journeys are intertwined and it's really great to actually come a long way over the 2 years and constantly be doing work with each other and supporting each other. It's speaking of arts entrepreneurship, it's especially in a country like India where resources for the arts are so few and far between. For arts organizations and entrepreneurs and artists to work in close partnership and solidarity is really the only way to make anything happen. So it's great that we have that relationship between us. So I'd like to keep this rather informal. So if there's any questions that anyone has, I just request you to just key it into the chat box and I'll try and respond there. Zoom does work better if people who are not speaking are on mute.
So I have a long sheet. If you allow, I just can run people through this little bit of regulations. I think that will help us make the session quite effective. I think people who are listening while you are speaking, we can keep our microphones in the mute mode so that we avoid the unwanted sounds or some feedback that might come in. And then we can always write our questions in the chat so that everyone can address them. We can address them during the discussion. That way we will avoid having a lot of conversation that will then become discussion maybe. So we can hear more from you. And then I would request everybody who's present to write down their email IDs first. So we would rather go through the whole conversation and then we will open the forum for question and answer. And in case any question that we already have in the chat is missed, we would actually get Vikram's response separately and would email to the people. So it will be really helpful if everybody can write down their email IDs in the chat box for now. And I would kind of shoot since you said informal, Vikram. So I remember meeting you in Ranan. That was quite a few years back, and I knew that Ranan was there and you were creating work, and it was quite fascinating. And tell me how it started, like how Ranan and Pickle Factory came in practice. Why not practicing art and create just art, but also build something that will give more opportunities to create art for other people? Why not just an artist, but also an artist entrepreneur?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is, it's the session is called Artist to Entrepreneur, but I think it's more relevant, probably in my case and for a lot of artists in India, to say artist as entrepreneur. Because we, as I said before, we are in a country where the structures that artists function within are not really very well set up. So you have the artist who's having to do a lot of the work themselves. So you're producing, you're fundraising, you're finding how to tour work, you're doing all that yourself. So in a sense, you are starting from scratch and setting up from scratch. So you are an entrepreneur even as an artist. So it's really artist as entrepreneur. And now to go back to the why also Pickle Factory rather than just Ranan as something that I had already set up. So Ranan was is a performance company which I had co-founded with my colleague Yuva, who is also a dancer and choreographer. And for about 10-12 years we were making work from Kathak, but also working with actors, dancers, designers, musicians. Really a cross-section of work was happening. And along the way, Ranan, when we have a very small studio space in South Calcutta, and over there we just, I think, organically, without much thought put in, started inviting other people in to have informal addas or inviting people in for Devashi's classes, things like that. So we were really starting to program without knowing that we were programming. At the same time, I had started traveling quite a bit in India on other projects, meeting other artists, and there seemed to be this need in the dancers community to have some sort of a home to call our own. So that was one impulse, that where is this, within India there is no venue, no space that is a permanent space that is mandated to be looking at the futures in plural of dance work, in a country which has so much variation in the kind of dance and movement practice that we have. There doesn't seem to be any one place that brings it all together or can bring it all together. And of course, this is arguable. This is my take on the matter. There will be other opinions. And secondly, living in Calcutta, I often found that a lot of work that was coming in from abroad was going to other cities, but not coming here. And also, artists who are making work in India rarely get the opportunity to come to Calcutta, purely because there's no one to present them. So I was seeing a lot of really interesting work made by artists in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Bombay, many other places, who were not able to come to Calcutta because no one was inviting them. So these were sort of the two impulses that led to me thinking about the Pickle Factory Dance Foundation. Now, the Pickle Factory wants to be a venue for dance and movement practice, discourse and presentation, located in Calcutta, and really addressing the local, national and international community. And we are not a venue yet because we don't have the physical space. That's going to take a long time to work towards, because again, it's about resource building, it's about finding the right people to come on board, it's about finding the right support, finances, everything. But what we started off doing with season 1 is we said, okay, this is a new idea, to have a space only for dance, and what we want is a repurposed space. We don't want to build a whole new building. Kolkata Centre for Creativity has already done that, but we really want to repurpose a space, an existing space in Calcutta, sort of paying tribute in a sense to the architectural legacy and cultural legacy that the city is home to, and really reinventing that space in a way by bringing dance and movement practice into it. So we started doing this in a sort of pop-up fashion, and we've worked in all kinds of spaces, from burnt-out cinemas to television studios to rooftop spaces, really to build the need for something like this to actually happen. We are getting there slowly. We have, I think, built quite a strong community around the idea, but it is an uphill journey. I'm not pretending that it's hunky-dory and easy at all. It takes a lot of doing.
Yes. So you actually led me to ask you the next question, practically, which is actually about the journey. So, in a very informal way, if I ask you to point out maybe a few high points and low points of this journey so far, from Ranan to Pickle Factory and how it is going, what would you say? You have already mentioned a lot about the resources and stuff and how to build a community. It's definitely one of the main challenges. So yeah,
I think the major high point, which is a continuing high point, is the fact that when I began working on Pickle Factory, this was actually way back in 2013. It was my Arts Management Fellowship project, the ATSA project, that I started developing there, even though we actually started the company only in 2017. I think a major high point is that you are constantly learning to reinvent everything about yourself. There is, there are pros and cons of there not being a precedent. If Pickle Factory is setting a precedent, there is the sort of problem that there is nothing to refer to, but you have the huge challenge and the exciting challenge of an open playing field, and the ability actually to forge a path which is fraught with discoveries and fraught with pitfalls. So it's both something that is really, really positive and something that one has to be very cautious about. So this is a continuing, I would say, high point. It's the fact that you need to keep learning and keep reinventing and keep re-strategizing. You can't say, oh, this works now, so therefore it's going to work tomorrow. You really need to constantly be on your toes. And the second high point, a major high point for me, has been, that's also been a continuing one, is the kind of people who throw their weight behind you. It's been very gratifying to. It's not just artists, and it wouldn't work if it was just artists, because artists have all the passion but none of the resources to make it happen. But it's all kinds of people who listen to the idea and really find value in it and say, oh, this is great, it needs to happen, and I'm going to support you to do it. And these people have come from all kinds of backgrounds, and they continue to come from all kinds of backgrounds. They do come from art backgrounds, of course, but they also come from backgrounds of related arts, not just dance and movement. They're coming from people who work more in literature or work more in music, or people who've lived away from the city for a long time and have come back and suddenly see that, oh, there is something that I would like to support in my city, and they come to you. So there's a huge, it's humbling that so many people actually come up to you and say, yes, we'd like to help. Partners like KCC, we've had KCC's been with us from season 1, but between season 1 and season 2, which was last November, December, the number of partners that we have in terms of venues, in terms of people giving us resources, just went almost, I would say, more than doubled between season 1 and season 2. So there's obviously a chord that you're able to strike. So that's a really high point, that there are people who are responding. I'm not sure whether there have been disappointments, but I wouldn't say there have been hugely low points that made us feel extremely depressed or suicidal in any way. Because we always knew that it was going to be a really, really tough journey. And so actually the support and what is coming to us, we're looking at as gifts that are unexpected, really, and that really keeps us going. I mentioned one other really high point, which I think Pickle Factory is very proud about. This has happened both in season 1 and season 2. Artists who we have invited have the feedback that they have given us has been both positive and not so positive, saying this and of course. But one universal thing that they have all said is that they felt valued. They felt that they were being put first. And being an artist myself, I know how many festivals that you have to go to, and you feel that you are compromising because the festival says, "Oh, this is what we can do," and sorry, you have to work within that. And I think with us, it's been very clear from the beginning that anything we have very limited resources. We're working in non-formal spaces that don't have any resources sometimes. A burnt-out cinema has nothing for technical resources, for example. But it's been our endeavor to really work with the artists to make sure that the work that they are bringing in is not compromised in any way. So if we need to help them reimagine the work for that space, then we really do that work to help them reimagine the work for that space. And that's something that's been, again, a huge learning for us, for us as a producer, for our production teams, the people who are running production, the technical providers, to actually be sitting there and working with the artists saying, okay, this is what you want. Not possible like this here, but how can we reimagine it to approximate that same thing in the space and with the stuff that we have? So that's been a huge high point, that the artists have come, worked with us, formed very, very close relationships and friendships, not just with Pickle Factory, but with the individuals in the Pickle Factory. So then you're really forging very long-term relationships with all these people, which is really fantastic.
Okay, so since you have mentioned the relationship of festivals and artists, it kind of leads me to another question, and I can also see a lot of art practitioners are there. So the question is, it's a complete different way of work when you are an artist and when you are an entrepreneur. When you are an artist, you kind of need a certain kind of time passage. You deal with time and space and everything in a very different manner. Whereas when you are an entrepreneur, it's that thing that is going on for to drive the whole program, the whole thing, the whole project itself. So what is your journey and experience to manage this both together? Or you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, well, as I said before, that I think the challenges and the entrepreneur hat began also with Ranan. It's not that it began with Pickle Factory, because Ranan was also it was artists making work, but it was also a company that needed to be set up, that needed to have certain structures in place. It was very loose structure, while Pickle Factory is not. Pickle Factory is much more formalized as a structure, and as a much more formalized as a structure, and has a much, I would say, much more clearly articulated vision. And I think that's key for any entrepreneurship anywhere, whether it's in the art field or anywhere, to really pin down very, very, very specifically what is it that you want to do, and to really do the work to make that as clear as possible. I mean, with a lot of entrepreneurs, the idea is very clear in their heads, but when they start talking about it, it comes out all muddled. Um, and then, of course, then it's not going to be clear to somebody else that you're speaking to. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have others share that idea with the same clarity that you have. So I think with the arts management, with the arts management fellowship program, that's something that it really helped me do, to really articulate in simple but clear language what Pickle Factory was setting out to do, how we were going to do it, why we were going to do it, who we were going to work with, all these sort of things in really about 5 or 6 lines, not more than that. It was really short, and it takes a long time to get there, because you feel that, oh, I need to say this, oh, I need to say that, oh, that has to be in there, that has to be in there. But really, if you sit back and look at it and really be hard on yourself, that am I repeating myself? Can I use one word instead of 3 adjectives? And really, really, really whittle it down. It's not only about helping to articulate, it helps you clarify your idea. Because then you're really asking yourself, why am I using this word rather than that one to describe what I want to do? And there's always a reason. You just have to find it and know what it is. It takes a long time, and you have to constantly revisit it, because as an organization grows, as a dream grows, it will have tangents. It will say, oh, okay, this is the path I thought I would go in to get there, but maybe I have to do this rather than do that. And to do that, you may need to change your articulation. It doesn't mean that your end goal is going to change, but you may need to change your articulation about how you're doing certain things, who you're working with, what your short-term goal is to get to your long-term goal. So all these things, I think an entrepreneur really needs to also think of, in addition to thinking artistically. I think for people like me, being an artist also is a huge help, because there are things that an artist naturally does that then affects how you work as an entrepreneur. An artist is naturally, of course, creative, I hope. But also, taking risk is part of what artists do. Whenever we go into making a work, we don't know what it's going to be. We never know. We don't make the work in our heads and then go into rehearsal.
Yeah.
You go into rehearsal with a few ideas and you play around. So the sense of play, the sense of taking risks, the sense of being okay when things don't work. That we tried this, we tried that. Okay, things didn't work today. We'll come back to it tomorrow with renewed vigor. An artist is always okay with that, because that's our process. An entrepreneur may not always be okay with that, because that could be read as a failure. But I think being an artist really helps me say that, okay, this idea for Pickle Factory didn't work so well. Okay, we'll come back and look at it another way. Maybe we need to refashion it. Maybe we need to put it on the back burner and come back to it 2 years down the line when these other 3 things are already done. Maybe it's not the right time for it now. So all these things, I think, really help having an artist hat and an entrepreneur.
Okay, so you mentioned the communication part here. And how do you think that communication, I also mentioned quite a different, like a very versatile crowd that comes into play when a organization is hosting a festival. How do you think the communication is qualitatively different with this, with the versatile crowd? Because your communication with the artist and your communication with the patrons or collaborators are always different. And you are talking about very clear communication, clear articulation, but not necessarily it is going to work. It's going to be the same articulation for different crowds. So what is your reflection on that?
So I think there are levels of communication. I think the communication that has to be universal for everyone, no matter who you're talking to, about who and what you are, or who and what you're setting out to be, that communication cannot be different for different people. Because that is your identity, and that is how you're presenting yourself and locating yourself within a certain context. So that communication cannot change. So when we say Pickle Factory is a hub, the word hub is extremely important. We say that we are a venue, but not in our main articulation. The word hub is really important, because once you say the word hub, it becomes alive, right? While the word venue is not as alive as the word hub. So you see what I'm saying? What words you're choosing is extremely important. So even now, when we are not yet a venue, we can still be a hub. We are a hub, because a lot of energies are coming in, a lot of exchanges are happening, a lot of things are being born, a lot of relationships are being formed. So it's a space of activity. That's what a hub is. Now, we all know there are many venues in Calcutta, film venues, theatre venues, all sorts of venues. There are venues, but no activities happening there. They're all dead venues, right? So venues can be both alive and dead. If it's a hub, it's an alive venue. If it's not a hub, it's a dead venue, right? So that articulation cannot change for anyone. It needs to be the same articulation and communication you put out for everyone, which is why you need to take a lot of time to make sure that it reaches more or less everyone. Yes, there always will be questions that you need to clarify, but more or less you can identify what space you're occupying. Where the communication changes is in the detail. So if you're speaking to artists, even within artists, there's not one communication that's going to apply. Very simply, in a country like India, what language are you going to talk to the artists in? This is a discussion that we had just recently, and the last project that we did last weekend online, we did with Arts Forward, Paramita Saha of Arts Forward, we did 24 videos responding, improvisation videos responding to a theme over Saturday and Sunday. So on Saturday, we put out the videos, 12 videos with a little English text. And then at the end of Saturday, we started talking about, shouldn't there also be Bangla text? Right? So on Sunday, we did a bilingual text, right? So you discover these things as you're going along, because you're saying, okay, we can't assume that our entire online audience is English speaking, or any audience, not just online audience. And if we're saying we're a hub where everyone is welcome, and if we're saying we're open access, we have to do the work in our context to be as open access as possible. That includes what language you communicate in. Right? So for us sitting in Calcutta, English and Bengali are the two primary languages that we must use. Later down the line, as and when we get the capacity, also Hindi. I'm not saying that you have to be using a language like Tamil sitting in Calcutta. No, because you're in this place, but this place is defined by a certain multiculturalism, and you have to reflect that if you're saying you're open access. So again, what language are you communicating in? What kind of artist are you communicating with? Is it a contemporary artist? Is it a classical dancer? Is it a circus artist? Or how you communicate is going to change. It's not necessarily what you communicate is going to change, but how you communicate is going to change. What kinds of audiences are you talking to? Are they audiences who are used to watching performance? Then there's a certain kind of communication. Are you working with, audiences who are coming to the theatre for the first time? It's a completely different kind of communication.
Yeah.
And different sorts of communication there as well, because you have to also then communicate what a theatre expects of you, as well as what you expect of the theatre. There are certain codes of behavior that we expect from an audience, as we expect from an artist. And this is, it would be wrong of me to say that audiences who are used to coming to performances all behave within that certain etiquette. No, we know that when you go to see shows in Calcutta, mobile phones are ringing, even if that audience member has come to see shows every month.
Yeah.
So it's not just about are you used to seeing performances or not. So there's all kinds of communication happening. And you have to be able as a team, not just as me as leading the team, but you have to be able as a team to know that this is the experience that we want to create for people to enter, both for the artist and for the audience. And therefore, within that, you have to be very alert to know how you're going to communicate to different people to ensure that experience gets created. And so you have to feel your way through that. There's no sort of guidebook I can say that, if you see a person like this, talk to them like that. No, that doesn't work. That's judging a book by its cover. You can't do that. You have to really, what you can do and what you must do is have extreme clarity, as I said, on what you want the experience to be for everyone. And therefore, once you have that clear in your head, you can invite people in different ways. But if you don't know what you're inviting them into, you won't be able to invite them.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to open the forum for discussion, but I have 2 questions. So just respond to them very shortly so that we can address the questions that our participants have. One is that what are your advices for the new age artist entrepreneurs? People who are artists right now but have a sheer need to become an entrepreneur, or already thinking about specializing into art entrepreneurship. What would you say to them?
Well, 2 or 3 things. The first, I'm not by any means a PhD on the subject. So I'm discovering myself as I go along. But I would say 2 or 3 key things. One of our Pickle Factory advisors, not advisors, when I was dreaming up the project, he really was very much part of helping me along and supporting me. He's in Germany. He set up various venues in Berlin over the last 30 years. And one of the things he told me is, Vikram, take a deep breath and dive in. So that's definitely one thing I would put there, because it's really, it seems a very naff thing to say, but really you have to have that staying power. And taking a deep breath and diving in does not mean that you have to hold your breath constantly. It means that you take care of yourself and give yourself breaks when you need to, otherwise you'll collapse. The second thing I would like to say is, again, if you're working as an artist in India, you already are an entrepreneur. So learn to accept that, identify how you are already an entrepreneur, and take that forward with you into whatever more formal entrepreneurship project you're considering. Thirdly, very importantly, do not lose your artist self while trying to be an entrepreneur. You have to feed that. It doesn't necessarily mean, maybe you don't want to work as an artist anymore, that's your decision, but do not lose your artist self in being an entrepreneur, because that is going to add so much richness, so much value, so much insight to what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. That's what is going to actually make it special, that you're working as an entrepreneur in an arts field with an understanding of the arts from an artist's point of view. And a lot of arts entrepreneurs do not have that. They come in from an administration point of view and they can't have an artist experience. It's not, they don't have that. So you can't blame them for it. So this is something that makes you unique. And last, there are many opportunities now, even in India, for you to train yourself in arts management, in arts leadership, in arts administration, short courses, long courses, all sorts of things. And I would very much encourage you to take a look at those. You may not want to do them, but at least read through the syllabi that they have, so that you know, okay, these are the things that I need to be thinking about. And find yourself a good team. You can't, and you should not do it alone. You really, really need to have a good team. And at this point, I have to say that at Pickle Factory now, it's a small team, but a really, really, really good team. All with a lot of passion, with a lot of belief, and bringing in a lot of energy. And you really need that. That helps you go forward.
Okay. I have 2 questions, and Sangram has 1 question. So my colleague Saurav is there. He's handling the meeting. He's hosting the meeting itself. So I'd request Saurabh to unmute Sangram because he didn't put the question in the chat, so he can ask the question.
Should I type out my question? Will that be
No,
easier?
it's okay. It's okay. Now you are live, so just speak.
Okay. Hi Vikram, funny how he's speaking again here. And hello to everybody. One thing I wanted to ask Vikram is that because very interestingly he says how the artist as an entrepreneur. So maybe while in your entrepreneurial ventures, if that may what may I call it, do you ever feel the need to let the artist self take over? I mean, have there been situations where you found the entrepreneurial venture so lucrative that you thought maybe as an artist you would find yourself better positioned in that venture? And did you let that take over, or how do you work that out? That's something I really want to know.
Well, I don't have a clear answer for you, but it's interesting you use the word lucrative because it's not lucrative. The field of arts entrepreneurship in India is not very much different in terms of lucre to the field of art in India. You're still, because you are inventing it as you go along. We don't have those exact structures. But in terms of having my artist self take over, I really feel that this is a question that I've been sort of trying to figure out for myself for a long time, that when am I wearing which hat? But I really feel that that's a question that is more a hurdle for me. It may be different for different people. That if I actually allow the different selves to infect each other, then something richer comes out without me thinking too much about, okay, which self thought of that. To allow for that contamination and that cross-pollination to happen. And it happens quite organically actually, because it's very difficult to separate oneself from another. And actually as an artist I find it works both ways, that I've learned a lot from my work with Pickle Factory and with arts administration, even in Ranan, that I take back to working in the studio. That you suddenly find yourself asking more specific questions, being more particular about how you want to structure an improvisation, for example. And that helps your artistic work as well. So I think this, equilibrium and osmosis between the two selves is something that one should aspire to. And sometimes, most of the time it works in ways that you can't quite pin down. Rarely it does come into conflict, and at that point you have to take the decision, okay, which self am I going to switch off? And that's not easy to do, but you learn to do it.
Okay, so the next question is from the director of Kolkata Centre for Creativity, Ms. Reena Diwan. So she asked, I'm just reading the question out. How do you handle the financial challenges that might be coming your way being an entrepreneur who is not supported by government or an arts council? And then there is also a response from Harpreet Kaur Jas, who's writing, yes, as Reena says, mobilizing finances and mobilizing different social groups, especially for classical dance, a meaningful dialogue within masses, that which I could be, that I felt could be developed.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to Reena ma'am's question, where she's asking that how you fight the challenges coming your way when you are not supported by government or an arts council.
It's a constant battle. That battle in the 2 years hasn't got easier, but it hasn't got easier not because we haven't been getting support, but because our dreams have got bigger. So with season 1, it was a minuscule budget. It's an embarrassingly low figure, so I won't mention it. And really what enabled season 1 to happen is all the partnerships in kind that we had. People giving apartments for artists to stay in, and people giving cars for artists to travel in. All that really, really adds up. In terms of cash, it was a very, very, very minuscule season. Season 2, we managed to raise 3 times the amount of finances. But the season 2 was also 3 times bigger. So,
Yes.
so sometimes you shoot yourselves in the foot, and that's where where I'm saying artists are used to taking risks. Sometimes I wish that we could sort of be a little more cautious on that. But then you see how season 2 is working, and you see at the end of season 2 we have such wonderful people who stayed on with Pickle Factory. We have people like Chongram, who asked the previous question, who has thrown his weight behind Pickle Factory because he experienced some things in season 2, and he sort of, so then you have all these wonderful things happening because of the season that you did, and then you say, no, we can't cut down. But in terms of the financial challenges, I think what I've learned as a fundraiser is that you have to walk a path of balance. I think you have to walk a path of balance where you are listening to what is coming back to you from the person you're speaking to as a funder. It's very rare that you're going to go to someone and say, look, this is our dream project, and that person is going to say, oh, wonderful, here, have 1 crore. It's not going to happen. Okay? If it does, then you'll probably have a heart attack and die, so it's not going to happen anyway. But you really need to be able to have a conversation when you're entering, say, a corporate, you're speaking to a prospective corporate funder, to see, okay, why would this corporate funder be interested at all in funding this? And then you have to be very clear after you've done that sort of what's the word, research for yourself as to why would this person be interested. You have to have the I think it's you have to be quite harsh and say, do my ethics match those ethics, right? And if the answer is no, you do not continue that conversation, even if it means you're going to lose lakhs of money, because then you're compromising on the principles on which you are building something. So that's the first thing. Often you'll be surprised actually how often you will come upon the possibility of a shared space. You have to be open-minded, saying, okay, these are my non-negotiables, but I'm happy to talk to people about X, Y, Z, right? And it's came as a huge surprise to me how many people that I could actually talk to. Not all of them have converted into actually money coming in, but how many people I could have conversations with, because I wasn't being like a fortress, saying, oh no, this is about art and art only, and you have to listen to me. No. You have to have certain non-negotiables. Your prospective funder has certain non-negotiables. There's a vast area in between, and you can find so many ways of working together within that. It takes time. So that's the second thing I learned with season 2. Your funding conversations have to begin months and months in advance, because it will take 3 months of conversation for you to even identify, oh, here's a common playing area. Now we can actually start talking about what we can do together. Right? So it really takes a lot of time. And you have to keep reinventing the wheel. You have to keep inventing what kind of communication are you going to have with this prospective funder as opposed to that one? This one is interested in this. Can we tweak a certain project that we have so that this person also becomes interested in the project? You're not changing the project because that would be against your principles. But you could tweak it to include something else. You could articulate it differently, which would still retain its value, but also make it more palatable for someone else. And by doing this, you are not actually compromising, you're actually opening up that to more participation. And this is the same kind of approach you need to have to building audiences as well. That you can't say, oh, this is it and this is therefore the audience should come in knowing this. No, you need to do the work to say, okay, how do I make this attractive to more audiences? So whether you're talking to funders or talking to audiences, that the need to communicate your idea and find a way to bring them in is really, really key. Yeah.
So I would again request Saurabh to unmute Miss Nirupa Umapati. She wants to ask a question, and then we have another last question, which I will lead you to. So Saurabh, please. Saurabh?
Yeah, Nirupa is unmuted, I think.
Yeah. Can you hear that? Just a second.
I can speak, but I didn't want to talk over Saurabh. Is that okay? Can I go?
Yes, sure.
Such a huge fan of you, Vikram. You know this, but and Reena, of course, and Titas. Thanks for the excellent questions. I'm so excited to be part of this conversation because I'm literally sitting here in Jersey City, and if this had not happened, honestly, I wouldn't be talking to all of you like this. So I really appreciate being here today. My question specifically actually was on journey of how you built a team, Vikram. I know that you talked extensively about the journey of all these other critical processes, and to just give you a little bit more background as to why I'm asking this question, because I spent about 14 years in finance, where I raised money professionally, but in a very different setting. So building an audience, the market changes every day where I worked, right? And risk-taking was what we did every day in and day out. But I'm 2 years old to arts as an arts entrepreneur, and I've spent 2 years building a portfolio of artists that I work with around America for now, right? And I've seen varieties of artists across disciplines and in terms of stylistic practices, and also in terms of careers. Some of them are emerging, some of them are mid-career, right? And I also play dual hats. One, I am an entrepreneur, but I also fund projects myself as a private donor. So I'm also assessing artists and the kinds of projects that I want to fund. My question to you is, I look at setting up an artistic organization as almost like a startup, right? Like, I mean, it literally pretty much has been triaged. First year, I was solo, and I was funded largely by the generosity of my volunteer brigade. Second year, I still am funded by the generosity of my volunteer brigade, and I'm going into my third year, and now I'm starting to be like, where am I supposed to be parsing out? Where am I dividing labor from here? You know what I mean? So could you talk a little bit about the history of Pickle Factory itself, if you don't mind?
So I think the first thing for me to say is also you need to acknowledge whether you are a team person or not. And for me, actually, I'm not a huge team person. So when I look at Ranan, it was very individual run. Of course, I had people working with me, but it was just me, and I was really leading everything. With something like the Pickle Factory, it doesn't matter whether you're a team person or not. It can't be individual led. So that's one of the first things to acknowledge. Similar to you, when we did season 1, there were 3 people leading the whole thing. There was me, there was Dana, who was looking after production, there was Devaruti, who came on as an administrator. She was called administrator, but she did everything: administration, project management, writing out the invoices, paying the artists, everything, coordinating volunteers. So, I mean, the designation was false. I think between season 1 and season 2, we realized that yes, we need a team, and we need a team to start much before the season. So we brought on a project manager about 6 months before we opened season 2. A project manager, production manager, and administrator is what we have now. The same project manager who came on for season 2 has stayed on with us. I think in terms of building a team, it's about really being able to share where you're going, and to share that, not just the passion. I think people keep talking about passion, and that's very, very necessary, but you have to share the adventure. You have to, and adventures are always fun. We've all grown up on, whether you read Enid Blyton or whether you read whatever, we've all, as kids, we've all read books which are, based on adventure, and we've all, read them from cover to cover as fast as we could. So adventure is part of our DNA. So you really need to communicate that sense of adventure along with the passion and the sense of collective involvement. The second thing it's something that we gravitated to organically. I'm not saying that is necessarily the thing to do. I think we began to consult with each other on everything very early on. So while Kunal is our project manager and Joyati is our administrator, they are doing those things, yes, but in team meetings and team WhatsApp groups, everyone is offering ideas and questions and agreements and disagreements on everything. And I think that collective nature, that we all own this, is vital for, especially in an arts organization. It's vital. Now, whether you build that through all, like we have done, or you build that through other processes, is, that's an individual thing. But that's how it happened for us. So now we have 4 of us who are sort of if you can use the word core team, but we have a whole close circle surrounding us, of which Hongram is a part, and all of them came to us either as volunteers or as people who came to season 2 and said we'd like to just throw our weight behind this. And so now we are in this extremely privileged position to have a core team, but to have these voices who are constantly with us, because that gives you such richness of opinion and richness of perspective, because they're not all from the dance world. They come from different worlds, but they found some value in what we are doing. But then they have different ways of looking at it and different ways of saying, oh, but this would work, maybe not that. And so you're getting this sort of chorus of voices, but all aimed towards the same thing. So yeah, I think, to have that chorus that is working in harmony, and to be able to listen to when the harmony is what you want and when the harmony is getting discordant. That's our challenge. But that's really how, for Pickle Factory, that's really how the team is building. And we're trying to be as open access. I mean, if you're not open access within your team, it would be disingenuous to say that we want the Pickle Factory to be open access. As charity begins at home, so you have to start at home.
Can I ask, sorry, Sitas, I don't want to hog this conversation, but can I ask just one follow-up last question on the same thing that Vikram
There
was
are already 2 questions which are very
okay,
interesting.
then I'll reserve this. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so you can write it down and we can personally send it to Vikram and get you the answer also. These 2 questions I would actually read together. One is written by somebody, I'm sorry, your name is not there, and it is say Coco phone. So I'm going with that. And then the question by Shrestha Das Chaudhuri. Interesting thing is that because they both are talking from 2 different perspectives, and it will be really nice to hear your opinion about the both questions together. So I'm just taking the privilege to put it together. One is, hi Vikram Da, hope you are doing well. As a student of business, I understand making profit is one central goal, while creativity aesthetics are essential in creating art. My question is, where do we stand in the intersection of entrepreneurship business, because I see a lot of conflict in the 2 fields. And the Shrestha's question is exactly from the opposite side, where she is writing, as an artist, I always thought that art, what I'm making, is not for the people, it's for myself, and if people like it, they are free to see it. It's open to all. But do you think that as an entrepreneur, when you are putting out something, that has to be for the audience more and less for yourself?
They're both extremely good questions, and this is actually it takes me back to during my arts management fellowship, the sessions on marketing, where one of the differentiations we made between the arts world and the business world is that, and this is of course a generalization, there are many layers to this, but in the business world you do your market research and then you say, okay, this is what we think is needed, so we will make that. So you find your audience, you find what the audience wants, and then you make something towards it. And in the arts world, you make what you want to make, and then you go out, find an audience for it. So I think that's the area that both of them are talking about, and it's very difficult. I would say definitely from season 1 to season 2, that's been a big learning experience for me, because season 1 was very much curated about what Vikram Iyengar wants. So the artists that we invited, it was very niche. It was all brilliant artists, but really, really, really quite choosing what I thought needs to be seen. When we came to season 2, the theme for season 2 was widening circles. So it was really about, okay, how do we break open the little closed space that we have opted to be in, really. It's our fault that we are closed. So how do we break that open? So I think there is where the creative side of being a curator and being a producer and entrepreneur met in some way, and it connects to what I was talking about how you have your conversation with your funders. What is the buffet that you're putting out there in terms of curating? Yes, you have your niche things, which is only going to have 50 people in the audience, but you also have other artists coming in where you can have 300 people or 400 people in the audience, which is not about one work of art or the work of one artist being better than the work of another artist. It's not that at all. They're just very different beings. And coming to this thing of, I don't actually think that creativity and the goal of profiteering are necessarily at odds. I think as artists, we are brought up to believe that money is a bad thing. While all of us would like it, we're still trained to believe that money is a bad thing, which is why other people also believe that artists don't want money, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So as artists, we need to make the case that yes, I do art, but I do it because I love doing it, but that is also my bread and butter. So we need to stop saying no to people coming to us and saying, oh, will you do this for free? No, I won't. So while it's not the same thing as a business wanting to make profit, I think rather than talk about money, if you talk about value and money as an expression of value, that may bridge the gap a little bit. And how does one bring, even when you're working with value, working with money, working with finances, how do you remain creative? I really don't think that they are two mutually exclusive things. They can be brought together. I mean, if I ask you to think about what are the most outstanding business entrepreneurships that you can identify in the last 10 years, very probably you're going to be identifying things that have come up which are extremely creative. It won't be the run-of-the-mill next business. It will be something like, I don't know, look at Apple. Right? I mean, where would they be without their innate creativity? So I think it's really trying to find that match. Yes, in the arts, your driving factors, not your balance sheet. But I don't see why there has to be an absence of a balance sheet either. And for Shrestha, yes, as an artist, you are making work for yourself, but I will also offer you something that one of the choreographers I work with, who's a contemporary choreographer, so she actually makes quite niche work. But when I was first working with her, she said, Vikram, you need to think of 5 people you want in your audience before you start making your work. And basically what she's asking me to do is to think of who do you want to speak to through this work. Because art is about communication. So you can communicate with yourself, definitely, but you are also equally able to communicate with others. So when you're making a piece of work, if you ask yourself, who are 5 people I would like to have in the audience for this work, you're already talking of 5 different kinds of people. And even while you're making the work, you will start thinking about how that work reads to those people.
Okay. Thank you, Vikram.